Hey guys, long time no see. I've been super busy with college, so I haven't had a lot of time to post as much as usual, like I ever post anyway. But we recently had a small fall break at UMich, so I decided since it's prime college app season, I would share some of my tips with you guys about starting and finishing your college applications. Let's get into it. So for this video, I'm assuming you already have your list of colleges that you want to apply to, like all set in stone, but maybe I'll make another video sometime explaining how to figure all that out and how to narrow down that list. The biggest thing to keep in mind for college apps is organization. I had a huge spreadsheet where I put all my research for all the schools I was applying to, and later that transformed into how I kept track of all the essays I was writing. And that's just how I kept myself sane during the whole process, because it's a lot to keep track of. So step one is to get down all of your application deadlines and all of your essay topics in like a Google sheet of some sort. And you can find all this information on the college's websites, but just having a summarized version of it right in front of you makes things easier. And depending on how many schools you apply to, you might have a lot of these. I like to summarize the prompts broadly based on theme, since a lot of them will start looking similar to each other. And your goal isn't to write 50 different essays by the end of the college app process, it's to write a few core essays that you can modify and tweak for each different school you apply to. And that saves a lot of time and effort on your part. So the big categories of essays are why this particular school, why this particular major, what's a way you've impacted your community, describe one of your extracurriculars, what do you do for fun, and how will you add diversity. It's important to read the entire prompt of each essay to fully understand what it wants from you and address every single part of it, but generally those are the main ones you should be thinking of when you plan your essays out. You also might encounter some weird shorter essays, if you can even call them that, like what's the soundtrack of your life? Or what historical event would you like to witness? Or write a letter to your future roommate. These might seem daunting, but don't worry, there's a way to tackle these that we'll talk about in the later steps. Step 2 is to forget about all the prompts for a second and just think about your entire life. Don't just limit yourself to extracurriculars, since that can be a little bit restricting and sometimes not show the most personal side of yourself, but think about any cool, fun, dramatic, or life-changing events or memories you have. List out your hobbies, interests, club, any volunteering you did, and anything else you feel like you as a person would be incomplete without. What do you do in your free time? Write down a few positive adjectives that you would use to describe yourself, because chances are you'll end up needing these eventually anyway for one of your applications or rec letters, and even if you don't, it's good to be aware of what you're trying to get colleges to take away from your application as you write it. Don't be shy about writing down what makes you unique, whatever that is. Now try to find the links between all of the ideas you've brainstormed. Start figuring out which could go together for which of the main essay prompts. Which of the things on your list shows contributions to a community? What about teamwork and leadership? Keep in mind that these things don't have to be represented in typical ways. Leadership can manifest itself in anything from being captain of the football team to organizing a few friends together to go bird watching. You should think about the most compelling stories you have rather than what you think colleges want to see. And don't worry if you don't have a ton of clubs or extracurriculars to draw these experiences from, because that's not the only way to show these positive qualities about yourself. So at the end of this process, you should have a list that encompasses a whole bunch of qualities about yourself. But there should also be a little bit of order within this chaos. Figure out what brings these things on the list together, and that can be the main thing you end up highlighting in all of your college apps. Some of these things on your list will be more connected with this theme or better show positive qualities about yourself than others, but you can even spin an unconventional topic that's not connected to your theme at all into an amazing essay that reveals something deeper about you. For me, the things I knew I wanted to focus on were Science Olympiad, because that was my life in high school, my love of teaching, and some of the more creative things I would do, like play the cello. I also knew that I wanted to major in some sort of engineering, and I'm really dedicated to sustainability. Those are the things that I for sure wanted to mention to every single college, but besides that, I had free range on which of the bullet points in my little brainstorm list I ended up including for which prompts for the different colleges. So before you start writing your essays, it's important that you get a game plan in place for which of the topics you're going to cover with each essay, so you don't end up repeating yourself more than once per topic per school. This is especially hard with the schools that have a ton of little essay prompts like Stanford or Princeton, but there are some ways to strategize it. Basically, start with your doc with every essay prompt for every school you're applying to, organized by school, with the word count included so you know how long you have to talk about each one. Next, write which of the topics from your brainstorming session could possibly apply to each one of these underneath them, and maybe a little note if you have a specific sub-idea in mind. Generally, you'll want to strategize the topics that you have the most to say about to fall under the prompts with the highest word counts. And just try your best to avoid talking about the same topic twice. I really love Science Olympiad and was super heavily involved in it all throughout high school, so I could have really easily written my Common App and all of my supplementals for every single one of my schools just on Science Olympiad. But then I wouldn't have touched on any of the other topics I had on my brainstorm list, and that wouldn't have shown every single part of my personality or my core being. Let's zoom in on Caltech's prompts so we can see how this process helps to narrow things down a little bit. The key for a lot of these prompts is just to be honest, and that should connect it to something on your brainstorm list as it is, but if it doesn't, then you're probably missing something key like on that list, and you can probably update it. For Caltech's 3 activities that developed your passion for a STEM field, I knew I wanted to write about this one moment I had as a 6th grader where one of our practices was held in my coach's lab, and that was the first time I'd ever been in a lab, and my coach let me help her set up one of her gel electrophoresis experiments that day, and I got super excited about that. For the second one, I was tempted to talk about designing a solar oven and winning the contest we had in my apes class, but this actually fit with one of the later prompts even better. So instead, I used the space to talk about my 2nd grade field trip to the gravel pit, which is also super influential for me since I found a really rare fossil that day, and that kind of sparked my interest in geology. For the third one, I talked about building boom levers in Scioli since it taught me about working and playing together as a team, and more about the engineering design process in general. These little essays were all really honest, demonstrated something about me from my little list, and weren't just about one singular thing, even with the short word count. Now, the next prompt was a lot bigger, and this is the one I was saving the solar panel story for. This one was a combo of why the major you chose and why Caltech, in the form of what will you collaborate with your peers on. So for this one, I led with my solar oven experience and connected it to specific research groups at Caltech that are working on optimizing solar panels. I also brought up Science Olympiad just a little bit and connected it to Caltech's solar vehicle and just kind of demonstrated how the two are similar and what I could bring to that team. The next essay was a what do you do for fun essay, and for this one I was just honest and I talked about the game Joust, which is this cabinet game from the 80s that I grew up with. This one kind of requires a little bit of lore to understand, but basically Joust is a pretty simple single player game, but it gets a lot more complicated if you introduce a second player. And I explained how I liked the unpredictability of playing Joust with my friends, and at least in my head, that kind of was a metaphor for me embracing the unpredictability of college or STEM field or life in general. I promise it makes more sense if you read it, but I'm not going to read it to you guys because plagiarism is a thing that happens. And the final Caltech essay was the diversity essay. And for these ones, I feel like it's really easy to think that you have to write about gender or sexuality or race if you fall under a minority category in one of those areas, but that's not necessarily the case. But you should only write about one of those things if you're connected to that identity or actually have a good story to tell about it. Like for example, I could have written my Caltech diversity essay on being a woman in STEM and how I will add diversity to their campus by being a woman, but that honestly would have felt disingenuous to me, so I didn't do that. I'm not really connected to that part of my identity super strongly, and I didn't have any standout stories relating to that topic, so I felt like the words could be better used talking about something else. I ended up writing mine about arranging covers to songs I like on my cello, and how I like taking people's song requests and playing them on the spot, and how I'd use that talent to brighten people's day up on campus, or apply those same creative thinking on the spot skills to engineering. The stereotype for a campus like Caltech is that there aren't a ton of artsy creative people, which actually isn't that true, but I used that essay to show that I could add diversity in that way, instead of writing about something I felt like I couldn't write about. So as you figure out what you're going to write for each of these prompts for all your schools, you also have to be thinking about what you're going to write for your Common App essay, which for me was the most stressful part of things. For me, it helped to do the UC application essays first, since that really helps you get in the college app mindset, and they're not connected to the Common Apps, so they're just kind of 4 standalone essays. And I really recommend taking a look at their prompts, even if you're not going to apply to any UCs, because in my opinion, they're the perfect length, and the prompts are nice and open-ended, and they can just help get you brainstorming for what you ultimately want to write your Common App about, or they can turn into the basis for like all of your supplemental essays. After I wrote my 4 UC essays and had all the topics down that I wanted to write about for all the supplementals, I ended up just taking my favorite of the UC essays and combining it with something I hadn't talked about yet in any of the other essays, and then making that into my Common App essay. So let's talk about the Common App essay. So I have synesthesia, meaning I see numbers and letters and symbols and stuff all in color when I look at them, even if they're in black and white. And also in my brain I associate color to sound, taste, smell, and touch. So it's really cool, but it also comes along with some mild struggles that can impact my learning. Like if a teacher is using too many colors to write on the board, sometimes my brain will get confused because those colors aren't the same ones that I have in my mind, so it's like double colors. It just gets really confusing. I mix up people's names all the time, like if they have similar colored names. I mix up my directions because east is a really similar color to left, and west is a really similar color to right, which is just very unfortunate. But anyway, I wrote my essay about embracing my synesthesia in various ways instead of trying to hide it from the world like I was used to. And I also connected that with helping some of the neuroatypical students I tutored embrace their differences as well, and how that helped them learn better than when teachers would force them to conform and try to make them learn like everyone else did. The main message of my Common App was even though we can't see through each other's eyes perfectly, we can always strive to accommodate one another and use our differences to our advantage. This was a good pick for a prompt for me since it wasn't too similar to anything I talked about in my supplementals, and it was deeply personal, and it showed aspects of my character that I wanted colleges to see. This is a rubric I made up for myself and gave to my friends and family to grade my essay on when I had them review it. I feel like it touches on all the main things a personal essay should be. Of course, you can't do everything on this rubric perfectly with your essay because you only have so many words, so it's kind of about what you're willing to sacrifice. Like, if you don't show a lot of leadership in your Common App essay, then make sure you demonstrate it in your supplementals instead. Or if your Common App essay isn't that deep, but you want to show colleges that you're philosophical, write a big brain analysis of something else in your life for one of your supplementals. Okay, now let's go over some tips for coming up with good stories and developing a good creative flow so you can expand on the topics you've come up with so far. So the summer before college apps, I got really into the podcast The Anthropocene Reviewed. So John Green is the host, and in every episode he basically ranks a couple aspects of human life on a 5-star scale. And if you know anything about John Green, you know how good he is at making everyday topics deep and pretentious in the best way possible. I definitely recommend listening to a few episodes of it to try to explore how you can be thinking deeper about the world around you, and even trying to emulate that style yourself. I tried to rate Joust on a 5-star scale, and the idea behind that became the basis for a lot of essays I turned into my schools by the end of the process. I also recommend watching a bunch of video essays on YouTube, since that's a fun way to learn more about what you're interested in, and a lot of those video essays give me the same vibes that a good college essay should. For some reason I'm thinking about Big Joel's hour-long, carefully crafted thoughtful review about the Adam Sandler movie Click. The movie isn't that deep, or at least I don't remember it being that deep from when I watched it when I was like 9, but Big Joel is the master of making even the simple things philosophical, so he goes on a rant for like an hour about that movie, and it's really good. Basically, the art of making even the simple things beautiful and deep is a great skill to have to spice up your college essays, even if you only have boring things to write about. The last main thing I want to mention specifically is the why this college essay. The number one thing to avoid is just taking stats from the front page of their website or those brochures they send you in the mail. You have to be talking about the more niche things that actually relate to what you want to do at that college. For every essay that I had like this, I would find some research related to solar panels that interested me, that the college had, and I connected it to my high school story about the solar oven to not only show that I'm interested in that research, but also show that I've done something at least tangentially related to it. I also looked for project teams that I thought were interesting, and it was a bonus if those were also related to sustainability. I mentioned the clubs and organizations that I would join if I actually got accepted to those schools, and I would explain how those were similar to my hobbies and my extracurriculars from high school. And occasionally I would also mention a program the school had that I would be interested in. So for the University of Michigan, I mentioned that their chemical engineering department, they have like concentrations in different things, and I was interested in the energy systems engineering or the environmental engineering concentration, and I'm still interested in those. Basically, the things that you mention in your essay should look different from everyone else's, and even though you're talking about the school, it should ultimately still reflect you and what you want to do there, and that's how you know you've gone deep enough. So spend a few hours on each of your school's websites, and look at the specific departments you might be interested in, and write down some details about them. These details can't be so vague that they apply to every school, like, oh, this school has good diversity or a good student-to-faculty ratio. Between your schools, you can follow the same template and tell the same story about yourself, like once you have that kind of figured out, but the specifics like the programs, the research groups, the labs, the project teams, the organizations, those should all be different between the schools if you've done it right. Okay, now some final rapid-fire tips. Please be yourself. This sounds super cliche, but if you try to only write the things you think colleges want to see, your essays are going to end up sounding generic and not tell enough about yourself, which is the entire point of the essays. If you're not feeling a topic that you thought you wanted to write about, don't force yourself to write about it for too long, because there's a good chance that that's probably not the right topic then. Also, limit the peer editing to just a few people you trust. People will start giving you conflicting advice eventually because everyone has a different idea of what they want to see in an essay, but you ultimately have to go with your gut and what you think represents yourself the best. Stay on top of things. Prioritize the schools that have the earliest deadlines, especially the ones that scholarships go along with that early deadline or the honors college goes along with that deadline. Alright, and for a good reference for a timeline of events, so I actually liked writing the why this college essays kind of first because they were the least related to myself and they wouldn't accidentally overlap with the Common App that I hadn't written yet. Keep in mind that you can submit a different Common App for every school that you apply to, but please don't. That sounds like a nightmare. Like, don't do that. Your Common App should be something that's not school specific. So I wouldn't really recommend that unless you're in a place where one of your supplementals for one of the schools is identical to your Common App and there's no way that you can change the supplemental to be anything else, or I don't know. Try to just ultimately submit one Common App essay at the end of this process, is my advice. Anyway, those are my main tips. Good luck everyone, you got this. Just take deep breaths and remember how great it's gonna feel to hit that submit button and watch your screen fill with confetti and finally be done, at least with one school's essays. Let me know if you have any questions about the process in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time!